The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, everyone, welcome to the webinar for the 2.1 release for Schoolbox. We're going to take you on a walkthrough of the latest features that we've built for the 2.1 release. My name's James Leckie. I'm the co-founder and product owner for Schoolbox, and I'll be your guide through the features for today. Just quickly, we just wanted to announce a few quick news items. Some of you will have noticed that our help centre's undergone a massive redesign. We've designed it around the idea of your personas within your school. Hopefully that makes it a bit easier to find the information that's relevant to you and the guides that are relevant to you as in your particular role within the school. So please go log in, check it out. Our help centre is a great resource. It has lots of guides on how to do almost everything in Schoolbox, and we're always updating it and adding new content to it as new features come out. So I do recommend you go and check it out. It's also where we're going to be posting our release notes and other information about this update. So it's a great place to get more information after this event and find out more about what this release has got in for us. And just a quick update. At this time of year, we'd normally be gearing up to do our meetup. Obviously, down here in Victoria, we're still in lockdown, so we're not really able to provide that meetup event at this stage, but we have been in contact with the MCG and they're going to be holding a spot in the new year. Around the 22nd of March is our new goal date. Let's hope everything clears up by then and we can all travel again. I guess as we move into this release, I think it's important to sort of talk a bit about what we've been looking at, what we've been facing with this situation with the COVID-19. For us at Schoolbox, it has been a time to refocus our priorities and look at what really does matter within the product. For us, the thing that we have sort of reflected on during this time is that Schoolbox has become, and it always has been, but it has become so critical to the function of a school. And it's so critical that a school can communicate and speak to its students and its parents in a timely fashion during a crisis like this. And of course, it's so critical that you can continue to deliver learning while schools are closed or there's no access to the school. We want to be able to still deliver that same experience. And a product like Schoolbox definitely has the most important role in that to deliver. So with that in mind, we've been working pretty hard from our home offices, as we've been all out of the office now for over 3 or 4 months. We've been working hard on bringing the next release together. Let's just get straight into it. And I think I talked about communication just a second ago and how critical that is. And so that's one of the areas that we've focused on with this update is what it looks like to communicate inside Schoolbox. The first update we've got in store is a new feature for inviting and sharing events with other people. When you create an event in Schoolbox, you could always create an event in your calendar and it would be a personal event. Now we have the ability to invite guests to that event as well. So I can create a one-on-one session with a student and invite myself and of course that student that I would like as well directly into that event. So from there, I'm able to create an event with a student and I'm going to get an invite directly to that student. That's going to go and be shared with that student on their calendar and appear as an event in their calendar. They, of course, can reply to that and say that they're going to be attending and accept that invitation into the event as well. I'm just going to log in as Jack Coles and accept that invite. So am I attending? Yes, I will be attending that event. And that then goes in and logs my attendance to that event. Obviously, you can use this for a whole range of different types of events. I've just demonstrated in a quick one-on-one type scenario. But if you're looking at something more sophisticated, perhaps it's a sporting event or something more advanced, you go into the edit event settings, and from here, you're able to set all of the details about what's going on inside that event. So traditional settings like the level allows you to perhaps share that event with a team or a group or a class. And if you've got a school level event, you can also share it with a school level. We can then turn attendance on, invite only, or open. Once it's in an open state, I'm able to invite guests and also allow guests who can see that event to come along and visit that event as well and sign up for it. Of course, if I need to, I can set a maximum limit on how many attendees can attend this event. So if I want to restrict that to perhaps the seating capacity of a particular location or room, I can set the max attendees, and only the people that get in will be able to, only the people in that first set of lists who respond will be able to attend. Once it goes beyond that, no one else will be able to sign up for that event. Sometimes you want events to have a bit of privacy around their guest list. So we've also got the ability to hide the guest list. So if you don't want that guest list shared with other people that are attending, you can turn it off, and that will mean that no one will see what's going on in that event other than you. Okay, let's go on to the next feature that we're going to have a look at today, and that's news. So over the last few updates, we've been steadily improving the news system, and we've added lots of great new features. We added priority news in the last update, statistics, so you could see more information. With this update, we've gone and looked at how we can present this information in a more appealing sort of way. You'll also notice there's a slight change to this layout here. It has been adjusted somewhat and tweaked. But more importantly, we now have new options for how we can extend that. So we'll go into the admin system and to the dashboard and configure the news component. We now have the option to configure things like the layout. We have a list reverse, which changes the images from being on the left to being on the right. We have a card-based layout, which puts the image at the top and does a 3-column layout with the articles aligned in a 3-column. I've also got control over what is the fallback image. So traditionally it's been none. So if you didn't provide a featured image, you would get no image and it would just be blank. Now you can select what you want as your fallback. Author portrait will show the author's portrait as the fallback image. School logo will show the school logo as the fallback image. So you can choose what matches with your requirements. In addition to that, we have compact mode. Compact mode will hide the blurb and other information, reducing it just to a flat list. If I update that now and return to my dashboard, I'll see it's now laid out in a card view with the articles in a column-based layout with a portrait photo at the top for that article that doesn't have an image. So you can choose the layouts that most match your usage of imagery, how you want to present that information, and you can also control what types of images you use, whether you use landscape or portrait. We often recommend using landscape. It fits a bit better in general, but you then have more control over what that looks like in the system. We'll go into this article. One of the big requests from the last webinar that we did following the release of the statistics feature was the ability to see exactly who was looking at this article. So we've now added recent visitors into the article statistics, but beyond that, if you drill down into view all, you're actually going to see not just those that have visited, but also those that have been addressed. So the audience members of this news article. So these are the people that have been audienced, and you can see when they last visited this article. So you'll be able to quickly identify who has and has not visited this article. So you get that insight into exactly who's reading it, who's not reading it very quickly and easily. Now this applies to all news, of course, so whether it's posted on your class page or whether it's posted at a school-wide level, you're going to get this report. At a school level, it's obviously going to be quite long. You know, we're talking thousands of people, so it is paginated, but it will be quite an extensive list. In the class, it'll be much more approachable, being able to quickly tell you who in your class has or has not read that article yet. Just be aware, of course, that you can read news not necessarily by going into it. So that means that last visited won't be registered if they don't go into the news. So if they just read the headline and the blurb and that's all there is to it, that won't be logged as a visit. And of course, other things like that can occur on the class page. You can put the whole article, so they're obviously not going to click into that very frequently. So although it's there, you do have to recognize the limitations of that last visited queue. It doesn't tell you the be all and end all of people having seen that article or maybe even delivered as email. Okay, let's move into the LMS now. And as you can see, the flavor of this release, we really haven't built any new big functionality. We've really been focused on those improvements across the system that people have been asking for a long time. The popular features that everyone wants that make life easier. And in the LMS, that's sort of what we've been doing as well. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start by logging in as a teacher, and I'm going to go into the courses area just to look at some of these new course features. I'm going to drill into my sample course here. And inside Persuasion and Media, I have a project. Now, there's a couple of activities in here that I actually want to move into this final project. It's not fully populated yet. This persuasive article I actually want to be part of a project, not on its own. I can now edit that assessment and change that assessment's location. So from here, you'll see just underneath the description, there's an assessment location field. And I can click change location. And in here, I've got a list of locations that I can move this assessment into. I can move it down into the project. I can move it into another unit. So any of these are possible locations which this assessment can be now moved to. So if I select change that location into the final project, now I just need to update that assessment. And it's now been moved into my final project. So I can reorganize and restructure my content in my course very quickly and easily. So if I want to readjust how my course is laid out, I can quickly and easily adjust that structure. Just a couple of deeper points about that. Obviously, when we do move an assessment, especially a due work, which might have a rubric on it, there's capabilities and indicators that are attached to that. Those capabilities and indicators will be copied to the other unit. So if they don't exist at the course level and they only exist at the unit level, they will be copied into the other unit as well. So you may end up with duplicate capabilities and indicators between those two units. So just be aware of that when moving things around, that you will create more than just the assessment move. You will actually duplicate the capabilities and indicators if required as well. Obviously, things like tasks and quizzes are more self-contained, so they can move around pretty easily, but rubrics are one of the ones that add a little bit more complexity to that move. Once I'm inside that project, and I can see that assessment now is in there, and one of the things that we weren't able to do previously was to push out assessments individually from a project. So you could always push a project as a whole out to a class, but you're never able to push individual activities within a project. We've now updated the ability, so from this project page, I'm now able to export to classes and select the class I want to push that to and export that individual assessment. So what this allows you to do is build a project as you go. So if you haven't completely fleshed out all of the activities in a project, that's okay. You can push it out, get them started, and then add activities to it from your course over time. So you don't have to have it all going from the beginning. All right, so what's up next? Let's have a look at some of the details within this assessment and what we can now do with this particular assessment. Now, we've talked about the location. We've added the ability now for weighting to be decimals. So if you have, for example, a non-rounded number, 33 1/3 is often a common one that we see. You can now create a weighting with up to 2 decimal places, just to give you a little bit more accuracy with your roundings. So that should help with those weighting calculations. especially in things like projects where weighting is a fairly important part of the project. As we move down, we have some additional settings here. So previously we had the ability to turn capability marking on or off. When you did that, it would utilize the marking system of the assessment above. So if you use letter grades for your assessment and you turn marking capabilities on for the rubric, it would use a letter grade. What that didn't allow you to do is have different marking schemes for your assessment and your rubric. And this is fairly common in the context of curriculums where you may not give an overall assessment grade. So we allow mark type none, but you want to mark the capabilities on a letter grade. So I know of a lot of states around Australia that have curriculum systems that require this, where you might be marking per capability, but you're not marking on the overall assessment. So now with this, you can turn off the assessment grade. I think previously people were probably just ignoring it, but now you can actually turn it off. It's not required, and you turn on just the capability mark. And all the same options that you had when you were selecting the mark system for your assessment are available for marking your rubric as well. In addition to that, when using the mark range option, and if we have a indicator here that we turn on, and we have 3 levels, perhaps we start at 3, then we go to 5, and then we go to 8. Previously, the range setting would give you the option to select from 3 to 5 in this option, and 5 to 8 in this option, but it would give you no options in the first level. As of this update, it will now give you the option to select from 1 in that case as well. So it will start from 1, and so you don't have to create that initial level with 0 or 1 in it. The system will automatically assume that you wanted to start from the lowest possible number 1, giving you that whole range. So it should simplify those rubrics a little bit and avoid that having to do a 1 or a 0 level at the beginning of your rubric if you want to use the mark range feature. All right, so that pretty much wraps up some of the changes we've done on assessments. Obviously, what we're doing here and the bigger picture of all of this, and it does feel like pretty nitty-gritty details at this stage, but what we're trying to do is build a system that is able to capture all of the reporting and assessment requirements across all different schools. And so we're trying to build a system that's flexible enough that you can use it for whatever assessment practice that you have within your particular school. And we need to make sure that the system's capable of handling those different types. And as we get more and more compliance requirements around, merging continuous reporting with summative reporting and pushing our reporting data or our assessment data from Schoolbox into reporting platforms, we need to get better at capturing the data that most likely reflects the compliance requirements in your region. So this is why some of these little tweaks and things like that are being added over time to make sure that we can handle all of those different requirements. Okay, let's jump now to a class page and just have a quick look at what are the changes you can expect on the class page. So first up, we have the new look drop-down menu on the left-hand side. So this menu has been shrunk down for height purposes. It avoids you having to scroll down looking through a long list to find things. Things have been organized into groups based on what they affect, class, folder, or course. So it should be a bit clearer to find what you're looking for. Obviously, the class actions are all your class markbooks, things like that that are important to you. If I go into the class markbook, this has been changed slightly in the way that it functions. Previously, it was just a generalized markbook. You could actually bring in any class into this one markbook. That's been taken away now. It is specifically designed just to be that markbook for this class. We did this for a couple of reasons. It helps us deal with permissions of who can see the markbook and who can't see the markbook in a more clear way. And one of those requirements that we've been getting from a lot of schools was they would like to do PD with staff, but they didn't want staff to be able to see the markbook. So with this update and these changes, staff, if they're a student in a class, i.e. they've got read access via their group membership, they won't have access to the class markbook. So that will be restricted to them. So you can have those PD classes with staff and they won't get access to that markbook. One of the other things that this change does is it means that the markbook now is much better at remembering its settings. So if I look at my markbook here and I filter just weighted assessments, because that's the only ones that I'm mainly interested in, if I come back to this after browsing away, I now see those assessments are now, my filter settings are all the same as they were before. So it's actually remembering my filter settings. Of course, if you want to go back, you just click reset defaults and it'll go back, but it is remembering those filter settings. Okay, I think I've got everything there. I think now we can move on to the page in a more general sense and outside of the context of a class. So one of the features that we've added into this new release is the ability to bring in the Immersive Reader by Microsoft. So when you look at a news article, a text box, or in this case, an assessment description, often, there's a lot of text there to read. You've got all your details about that assessment, and students really need to comprehend that and read it easily. So what we've done is we've integrated the Immersive Reader tool from Microsoft. It's a great tool that can help students read and comprehend what's going on. So if I click this small button in the right-hand corner, it's going to launch into the Immersive Reader. The Immersive Reader will show obviously the text of that description gives me the ability to reformat it. I'm able to adjust things like the fonts, the colors. I'm able to change my reading preferences. It even will do translation and it will read it back in whatever language you want. So there's some really great functionality here for students perhaps in EAL or perhaps students that suffer from dyslexia or other reading difficulties to really help them read and understand the text that you've written into Schoolbox. So this feature is going to be available throughout the system. At the moment, it's on every news article, every assessment that you create, and every text box as well. This service is free from Microsoft. All you need to have is an Azure tenancy, and you can set up the service for no cost and connect Schoolbox to that service. So it's a great thing to set up and get running within your school. Okay. What should we go on to next? So going back to the page, we've added an update for the text box component. So if I go to a page that has a text box component on it here, once again, you can see that Immersive Reader button appearing there on the side of the text box. But what I actually wanted to show you here is the new edit mode for the text box. So previously you would have to click modify, it would reload the page and give you sort of an editing experience that was outside the page. Now the editing is completely in line. So I can click in, start typing, add images, all the things that I could do before, embed video, everything that the text box was capable of doing before, it still can do, but now it's in line. And if I want to preview that, I just click out and I can see the changes that I've made. Once I'm finished and I'm happy with the changes I've made, I just click the save button at the bottom, and that automatically commits that and saves it. So that's now saved. If I'm halfway through editing and I forget and I click off onto another page, it will pop up and warn me that I have unsaved content on the page. So it will stop you from exiting the page if you're halfway through editing something. So just be aware of that new experience. There are a few changes to that, but it should be overall a lot easier and a lot simpler for people to understand what's going on. I should mention while we're talking about it, when you do add a text box to a page, a new text box to the page, one of the things that you would have noticed that was missing from that experience was being able to name my text box. That naming process now happens when you first create the text box. So we set up the name for it. So introduction, and then away we go. We can start modifying that from there. Okay, so a little bit of change in that experience, but we think it's going to be a lot smoother, a lot more modern, a lot more sort of user-friendly in general. Okay, next up, there you go. So I haven't saved all my content, so I've got to save that before I leave. It just stops me like that. Right, so one of the other components that's been around for a long time that we wanted to update was the Twitter component. The Twitter component has always been a bit finicky. One of the big problems it always suffered was it only ever seemed to get 7 days worth of tweets, and that was always a problem. And that was because we were using the Twitter API. We've now updated it to use the actual Twitter feed widget. So that gives us much better information. It also maintains it, keeps it up to date with all the latest features. With this, you're able to put in a URL to a collection, to a list, to a user, anything you really like, really. I'm going to put in the Schoolbox user here and update that. It'll then bring in the tweets, and you can then see our Twitter feed coming in from Twitter. While I'm talking about these components and what's possible, we went through all of the components and made sure all of them had the ability to change the heading and also hide the heading. So if you want to hide the heading from this component, and perhaps you want to hide the heading from this component, you can do that. And while I can still see them in this mode, if I switch to the student view, you'll see that they're now embedded with no heading. So all components now have the ability to hide their heading, or if you want to keep the heading, to change the text of the heading. So that was an often requested feature to make that a bit more customizable for your pages. Let's go on. While I'm here, I'll just switch back to the teacher view. There was one thing that I probably should just touch on. We have added into the view status page, and I forgot this one earlier, but I'll just go back to it. You can now filter the status screen based on the requirement to resubmit. So for those that probably may or may not be aware, this allows you to filter the list of students' work to a particular requirement. So if you just want to see the students that you need to mark, you can click on marking required, and that will just provide the ones that require marking. We've also got now the filter option on resubmission required. So if you've been marking students as requiring resubmission, you're able to mark those through that setting there and filter them, so you can see exactly who you're waiting on to be resubmitted. Okay, one last little thing that may be of interest to people. We have gone and added a simple version of Markdown into both Social Stream and into teacher feedback on comments. And what that means is that there's actually a bit more formatting availability inside these areas. So once you've got Social Stream, and there's no text box controls here, there's no editor, so you can't mark up your content. But we wanted to give you the ability to do some things that are a bit more sophisticated, a bit more web-like. So one of the things we've done is, if I do a link to say Schoolbox and post that to our feed, previously that would just stay as text. Now, of course, it gets marked up into a link. There's actually a lot more detail to this. I'm not going to go through all of it at the moment, but just there you can now start to post links. That will also mark up links that you post within your comments and feedback to students on their assessments as well. So just nice to know that that's been improved. Sorry, I just have to scroll my notes down, get to the next page. All right, I think we are wrapping up now. We've got one last sort of section, but if you've got any questions or anything that you would like me to discuss in more detail, please send them through into the questions area inside GoToWebinar. we will obviously endeavour to answer all your questions at the end of this session, so please feel free to ask them. Obviously, I'd prefer to keep them on topic. Make sure you keep them in line with what we're discussing today. I will talk a bit about the roadmap at the end. So, if you've got questions about the roadmap, just wait till I've sort of had a bit of a spiel on that. All right, let's keep going. So now we're going into the admin area. So, I mean, a lot of you are probably Schoolbox admins, so this is the stuff that really is going to be of interest to you, I guess. I normally do the admin stuff first, but I thought I'd mix it up today. With the first thing that we've done, and probably the thing that everyone's been pulling their hair out about recently, we've seen it on our support desk, has been the huge volume of content being accidentally deleted. And look, I don't blame teachers, they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to clean up everything and get everything organized for remote learning. They're obviously in a rush and they're making mistakes. So to help with that, we've added the restore option. Inside the admin system, there's now an area where you can go and look for folders and assessments to restore. What this will show is any folder or any assessment that's been deleted in the last week. So you have 7 days, basically, to come in here and recover something that's been deleted. So if you have a teacher, come running down the hall or pulling their hair out about something they've just deleted, maybe an assessment where they had all their students' marks or feedback on and they've just deleted it, you can now come in here and quickly locate that assessment and restore it for them with a click of a button. So very quick and easy. You just click the button and it's back. So no dramas there. Obviously, this is powered by some of the tools that we've been using behind the scenes on the support desk for some time, but this is just a nice, easy interface that allows you to do the same things that we've been doing behind the scenes for some time now. The reason we didn't do this immediately was because we weren't confident we could do this accurately and reliably. Over the last sort of few months, we do think we've got to the confidence point where this works well and works well enough that we can release this more generally. Just a few things to be aware of. You won't see in this list any assessment or folder where the parent has also been deleted. So if someone's gone and deleted a child and then the parent as well, you won't see the child. You'll have to restore the parent first before you will see the child element, if that makes sense. So just be aware of that, if there's something that has been deleted but it's not showing up, it could be because the place where it would be restored to is also itself deleted. And obviously we can't restore things to things that are deleted. So hopefully that's going to help your teachers who have accidentally deleted things over the last few months. All right, next up, at the start of the year, Microsoft announced the introduction of making all LDAP connections go via LDAP-S. And because a lot of LDAP-S servers were signed with a self-signed certificate and not signed with a proper certificate authority certificate, it meant we weren't able to trust the LDAP server. So we couldn't do LDAP-S with a lot of your servers. And what was happening was that we were asking you to send through your certificate authorities that you signed your certs with so that we could add that to our server and allow that trust to happen. Because that's been such a common thing to happen and such a required thing, and we probably expect that some of those CAs are probably going to change at some point as well, we wanted to make that something that schools could control themselves. So now under LDAP, you'll find that there's an area for uploading your certificate authority. So once you upload that, that'll obviously make Schoolbox trust that certificate authority. So whenever we're connecting to an LDAP-S server, we'll use that certificate authority, and if it's trusted, it'll connect. If it's not connecting. You can see in the health check whether it's working or not working, so you might have to fiddle around with that a bit to get it working. If you need any help with that, contact support. We're sort of recognize that it can be a bit finicky and a bit tricky depending on how you've set up your certificate authorities. All right, moving on. One of the things that has been in Schoolbox for a long time is the ability to configure your skin and customize that skin. And for a long time, there was a really painful thing about this where it took like 5 minutes for the skin to be built and then be ready. So you'd make all these changes, and then you have to sit there waiting for those changes to come through. Now, those changes can come through in real time. So as soon as you make these changes, they will appear on your skin. Now, this is thanks to some advances in browser technology and CSS technology. We've been able to do this. It also means we don't support as many browsers anymore, but the pro is that we get to simplify our skin controls. So you can quickly and easily change, for example, the colors here. I'll choose that color there, save that, and immediately you'll see that that has been updated to the new color across the top. So very quick to fiddle and change with those skin settings, so much easier to sort of get the right colors going. Now that's going to burn my eyes, so I'm just going to set that back before. Okay. All right. So skin builder updates. This has also been designed to, in terms of us moving to the cloud and a whole lot of things that are happening in the background there. There's some architectural work that's happening in the background to enable us to better serve Schoolbox from the cloud. And this is part of those changes as well. So minimizing these sort of background processes and tasks makes it much easier to support customers in the cloud as well. All right, probably the big feature for this release is our new ability to set LMS settings on a year level. So what this means at a sort of a high level is that all of the sort of things that you could set in our system were always set, or LMS settings were always set on a global level. And what that meant is you've got a one-size-fits-all Schoolbox setup from junior school to senior school, from K to 12. And we recognize that that's not necessarily what your school looks like. You're going to have different reporting requirements. You're going to have different assessment standards. You're going to have different ways of doing things in different year levels within your school. So this new view here, what we're looking at is the ability to control a range of different settings on a year level for your LMS. The way these get applied is that when you're creating your class pages at the beginning of the year and you import them, you set a year level on that class. So say you're uploading grade 3, you'll set that to be year 3, and all of the settings that you see here for year 3 will then be applied to that year level, to that class. So that means that class will get its own unique, I guess, configuration settings for the LMS. What sort of things can you configure? Obviously, the overall grade system is one of the important things. How do we calculate the overall grade? Do we have none? Do we do a percentage? Do we do a letter grade? We've now got choices. In fact, percentage is all new. So previously you didn't have a choice of percentage at all. We've now added percentage as an option, and you can now configure this obviously on a per year level basis. Obviously, you probably may not want to show overall grade. So this is what you configure. Say you might do percentage and then turn it off. What this would do is in the teacher's markbook, they would see a percentage overall grade, but the students on their grades page would not see an overall grade. So you've got flexibility here. You can control the markbook independently to the class, to the continuous report, and you can also control sort of how teachers use it as well. So you've got lots of flexibility here. Obviously, then you go down through the settings that apply to the continuous report, whether you're going to show it as a grades page at all. Perhaps they don't even want continuous reporting. They might want to turn continuous reporting off in year 3. Do we show graphs? Do we show rubrics, capabilities, progressions? All sorts of things that have been traditionally only globally settable can now be set at that class level. Okay, so I say class level, but it actually is year level. But what we expect is that you'll set all of your year 3 classes to have a year 3, and then they'll all have that consistent setting set for all of those classes. All right, that pretty much wraps up the presentation for today, so the walkthrough part. I've got a few important notes to go through. Just a reminder to ask your questions, and I'll get to those in just a moment. Just a couple of important notes as this release rolls out. So this release will go into beta as of today. So we'll be rolling it out to development servers, staging servers over the next sort of week or so. We don't like to do all at once in case something goes wrong. So there will be a staggered rollout as we roll out progressively to your staging servers. We'll monitor that rollout as it goes, watching for any bugs or integration issues as we deploy that update to your staging server. Once it's out on the staging servers, we expect around a 2 to 3 week period with which we'll do a beta. That period, you can look at the system, you can test it out, you can try things. I'd always encourage schools to look at their custom work and make sure it's all still working. I don't think there's any reason to be worried about major things breaking in this because most of it's just small improvements, but it's still worth checking out all of the things that you've customized in your system to make sure they're still working, especially those with custom CSS and things like that as well. One important note with this release is that we no longer support the browser IE11. Now, our statistics show it's not a very used browser, but it is important for us to note and warn schools that IE11 will no longer be supported inside Schoolbox. There's a couple of reasons for that, but I think everyone knows that IE has passed its time. We've ripped all of the Flash out of Schoolbox. We no longer have backwards compatibility or polyfills or anything like that for IE11. And the skin builder changes also necessitated the retirement of IE11. So that browser is no longer supported. Anyone accessing Schoolbox with that browser will be asked to upgrade to Edge or Chrome or another browser. So just be aware of that is no longer a supported browser. That's also going to allow us to do some more security enhancements as well in terms of our encryption. So once that is rolled out, we'll start to enhance some of our encryption standards as well, because IE was sort of the holdout there with some of our security. Another important note, the Twitter component as it stands no longer supports hashtags. So you can no longer filter to hashtags on Twitter. And finally, the Immersive Reader, obviously you're going to need an Azure tenancy to get that up and running. So if you don't have an Azure tenancy, I recommend going and get one. I got one, it was free. They do a year trial, but I'm sure most schools by now would probably have one. And like I said, the cognitive service Immersive Reader is available for free as well. So that shouldn't be any drama there. Okay, let's just quickly talk about the roadmap before I answer any questions, because I might answer some of these questions by going over the roadmap. Traditionally, I haven't done a roadmap discussion, but I think in these times it's important to look forward to where we're going. On our roadmap, we've been working on a large junior school research project, and we sort of identified junior school engagement as one of our key areas. And this work that I've got up on the screen right now, this ability to fine-tune the LMS for the junior years, is really the beginning of our junior school project. It's really a beginning of what that research has discovered. But going on from there, we've also identified a few things that we would like to improve. Firstly, we're going to be building a new class list that will allow teachers to share evidence, set goals, award achievements, and set pastoral notes across the entire class. So quickly and easily be able to capture a learning moment, to set some goals for a group of students in their class. That's the type of thing that we're seeing really useful within the junior school context. And so the next release will feature a lot of that type of functionality to enable perhaps outside of the assessment context, and looking more at that more generalized learning moments and goals and achievements, and trying to capture that progression inside Schoolbox. So that's one of the areas we'll be working on over the next. And if you want to find out more about that, there is an article posted on our blog, on our Schoolbox blog at the moment about that, that I wrote a few weeks ago. So go check that out for more details. Obviously, with the learning moments idea, we also want to make it easy for students to post their own. So we're going to have a new experience for junior kids that's really simplified, that's really basic, just for them to press a button and capture something on their phone or their tablet. Really basic, really easy. So that's another thing we'll be adding. And of course, making that available to parents and making it visible to parents. The feedback when we looked at research on parents was that they found it difficult to discover new content within inside Schoolbox. So we're really prioritising exposing that information to parents as well. Obviously, when we talk about achievements within Schoolbox, and it does obviously underlying the achievements is the concept of badges and micro-credentials. And so goals and achievements will be a badge system under the hood. We're going to be developing badges in-house and linking them up to curriculum and building our own sort of map of achievements mapped to curriculum so that we can have a really good high quality set of information that you can start running with immediately. So that's one thing that internally it's a bit of a change in our direction to start to actually build out that content for you so that you don't have to go and build all the badges yourselves, because we could see that being a really time consuming and high effort process, which we think we can simplify by providing sets that align with the existing curriculum standards and make it easy for you to get up and running with those achievements. Obviously, we don't want you just to use ours. We want you to extend it with your own custom flair for your school. So we want schools to be putting their own badges in, their own achievements, their own awards, their colours, all of those things we expect it to be enhanced with by you. But those core curriculum standards, we want to be there from day one. Just finally, in terms of SIS integrations, and I know a lot of schools at the moment are looking at SIS integrations, and they're looking at, what SIS they have going forward. And I know that everyone appreciates me talking about what we're doing with SIS integrations. Obviously, as many customers are moving towards cloud-based systems, having APIs is really critical. And so our focus has been over the last sort of 6 months, and also for the next 6 months, into developing cloud-based API SIS integrations. So the three that are on our shortlist at the moment and in active development, we have the TAS API, that's under active development and will be coming soon. The Central API is also under active development. And then finally, the WAND API. For those that haven't heard, WAND is a data broker that can actually sit between your SIS and your other school products and provide data to them. And so it's a brokerage system that we can connect to, and it sort of isolates us from having to build connectors to every SIS because they do the heavy lifting of connecting to all the SISs. So that WAND integration is also on the roadmap, and it will extend our capabilities to many more SISs over the next year or so. All right, that pretty much sums up the roadmap. Let's now go through some questions. So firstly, James Dodd asks, any news on APIs, News API? Good question, James. So we have actually been working on the APIs, and you've just made me think of some things that I didn't actually show. So if you go to a user now, and I'm just going to modify a user here, up in the top right-hand corner, you'll find Generate User Token. What this does is it's going to create a JWT token for use with our API. So you'll be able to use this token to actually make API requests as that user. So for those developers out there, and I know this is only really for the really IT heavy people, this will allow you to create a authenticated user token. You use that token and put it in your API requests. In addition to that, we have launched a new site called api.schoolbox.com.au, where our documentation is housed. It has information about our API endpoints, and over the next few weeks, we'll be padding this out with the API endpoints for news, calendars, and a bunch of other already existing API endpoints. And you'll be able to use that JWT token that I just talked about to authenticate against these APIs. So if you're looking to extend and enhance Schoolbox, or perhaps plug in workflow engines, this is going to be our sort of go-to location for finding out about how those APIs work. they're all documented here. You can see different ways to communicate, how to update users, change the groups and roles and things like that for users. So all of that information is going to be documented on this site as we go forward. So keep an eye on this. It will be updated over the next few weeks to include many more things. But yes, with this release, you can now use our APIs, I guess, much more reliably, and they should be well documented via this site. So thanks, James, for that question. Mohammed asks, I would like to inquire, Schoolbox offers API integration. So same question again. So yes, I think I answered that question, so I won't go over that question again. One thing I just did remember that I sort of forgot about, and before I go on to the next question, with the filter system, when you change filters, and if I change the filters for, say, the pending assessments, you previously could change the settings here, but it wouldn't necessarily apply to all of the users. There's now a feature that allows you to push the default selections to all users. So if you want to override users' settings, you can do that. So if you wanted to, say, for example, turn tasks off for all students in their due work calendar, you can now do that and use this push feature to push that change out to everyone. So for schools where they've been using it for a while, students have customized their own filter settings. This will effectively reset those customizations. Okay, Michael asks, Michael asks another API question regarding the WAND API. Do we expect to use the WAND API with Synergetic? Look, the reality is the Synergetic real-time integration is, unsurpassed in the marketplace. It is the best of the best, and it is the gold standard. So it's going to be very hard for WAND to compare. Having said that, if you're in a situation where you want to go cloud and Synergetic's holding you back, WAND may be the solution to that. It may mean that you have slightly less functionality, but it may be that that overrides the requirement. So yes, you could technically use WAND with Synergetic, and certainly with Synergetic's or EHG's group's new product that they're starting to talk about, WAND is going to be the preferred method for us connecting to the new product that they're talking about. So although WAND isn't as sophisticated as what we are able to do when we do a direct integration with a partner, those partner integrations are really deep and really sophisticated. WAND adds another layer of abstraction, and so they are going to be generally simpler. But that doesn't mean they're not fit for requirement, but they will definitely be simpler. Lockie asked, do you have an API roadmap for what API endpoints you plan to add? So just a quick roadmap, Lockie. We've got news and calendar already done. We do plan to, and I've talked about this in previous meetups, that all new features are being built API first. And so technically all newish features do actually have an API. They're not all documented, but we do have APIs for all newish features. Some of the older features are not APIs, so they have to be updated or rebuilt first. And so say something, I had a question the other day about the social stream. Is there an API for the social stream? And unfortunately, the social stream is one of our older features, and it doesn't have an API. But we do plan to rebuild features over time, and those will happen as we progress through the system. We always reinvest in our existing technology and update it. And when we do, it'll become API based, and we'll document that API. So that will happen over time, and you will see more and more things added to it. It's not just the API requirement that drives whether we rebuild something. It might be also other requirements. For example, quizzes. We know quizzes need to be rebuilt, so they'll likely go on the list next year. And you'll see APIs for the quizzes coming about next year fairly early. So it's gonna depend a bit on that roadmap, but there will be more things added over time. And certainly the ones that we already have available, we'll make sure to get them documented over the next few weeks and get them up, so at least you can see the ones we have. Okay, I'm being asked to move on from APIs. we could get stuck in APIs all day, but let's go on to news. So Chris asks, it's been answered. Okay, so when you invite a person to a calendar event, yes, they will get a notification. I wasn't sure if I mentioned that or not, but yeah, inviting someone to an event is a great way to notify them that that event is on. So it doubles not just as like an invite, like so you can tell whether they're coming or not, but also as a way to let people know that something's on. So it's a great tool. The other thing I was thinking about when we first sort of conceived this feature, it was during the initial stages of the shutdown, and what was happening was a lot of teachers were without a timetable, and they were needing to schedule meetings, you know, Zooms or Teams meetings in the class for subsets of the class. They weren't doing big groups. They were trying to break them down into smaller groups and meet with, say, 8 or 10 students at a time and do one-on-one sessions. And in that context, we thought this would be a great way for teachers to be able to send invites to students to let them know that this is when they should come online, log into this meeting and attend this session with the teacher. So that was the context by which we sort of came up with this feature. Lauren asks, can we filter the data on the visitors report? At the moment, no. We haven't put any filters in. It is just a big long list. It's sorted alphabetically by surname. We recognise it's probably not ideal, but we'd love to hear people's feedback on what type of options they would like to sort or filter by. We're happy to add exports, sorts, filters, whatever you think will help you use that data better. Just let us know and we can enhance that over time. But we just wanted to get it out there because we knew that it was a requirement that people could see that information, so we got it out as quick as possible. All right, Gemma asks, can you set a fixed dimension of the news images on the dashboard or news feed? So Gemma, the dimensions on the images are fixed, but they do change, and they change based on screen size. So when you say fixed, you probably mean fixed for all screen sizes. In Schoolbox, everything's fluid. We have to be responsive to a wide variety of screen sizes. So images in news do adapt to the device that you're on, so they're not fixed. The best I can tell you to do is to do ratios and to do of a certain resolution, and the system will then work out what's the best for that device and that screen. All right, moving on to project questions. We've got a question from Alex who asks, will project containers appear on the grades overview page? I think I discussed this recently with you, Alex. At the moment, no. The projects are not visible on the grades summary. We certainly, there was probably an oversight that they're not on there, and we're happy to add them. So we'll put that on the list of things to do for the next release. Richard asks, are there plans to have the change location allow moving items between courses? Okay, so it's a good question, Richard, and I sort of alluded to this fact a little bit about the complexity of moving an assessment with its rubric and its capabilities and indicators in the system and how complicated that was. Technically, yes, we could move items between courses, but we avoided it because of the concern about creating a bit of a mess when we did it. So at this stage we haven't, but technically, yes, it probably could be done in the future. What we're looking at probably more closely in the near future is the ability to export and import courses. I'm thinking that might be where we go next, and that might give you the ability to move things around and reorder things at an even bigger scale. So that's sort of where we're thinking at the moment. Dean asks, is the Immersive Reader system-wide or just a few components? Dean, yes, the Immersive Reader is just on a few components. We've specifically identified content areas that need to be read and also are structured in a way that you know, they work well with the Immersive Reader. one of the things the Immersive Reader doesn't deal well with is complicated layouts. It tries to strip out all of the layout information, all the images and all the things like that. And so doing it on a more wider context can be challenging. So we've identified what we thought were the most common things that students would need to read: news, text box, and assessments, activities. But we reckon there will be more things. So we're happy to hear feedback on what else would be useful for it to be added to. It's very easy for us to add it to things. So if there's an area that you think we've missed, let us know and we'll add it. Okay. Alex asks, is the Immersive Reader retrospective? Yes, it is. It'll apply to all content. So all old news articles, if you go through the news archive, it'll be there. If you go through any page going forward, it'll be there. So yeah, it's not on new content. It is on all of those components that I talked about in all locations. So every assessment, every news item, and every text box, it'll be there. All right, the text box. So Jane asks, does the text box scroll down as it gets longer or stays at the top of the component? Yeah, it's a good question. So as the text box grows in size, obviously the page will grow in size. You'll need to scroll around that page to get to where you are editing in that text box. But because it's in line, it's a bit easier. You're not having to scroll the content area itself. You're scrolling the whole page because you're actually viewing the content in line in the page. So it is actually a bit easier to scroll in that regard, because it's always difficult to scroll like a box inside a box. I find that very difficult to manage, but now because it's in line, it's one big scroll for the page. The second part of that is that as you scroll down the page, obviously that the editor component will scroll off the page, but it's intelligent enough and smart enough to stick on the page wherever you scroll inside that content area. So if you're down at the bottom of the text box and the top is off the screen, you'll find that the controls are down the bottom, at the bottom of the page. If you're halfway through, you'll find that it's floating at the top of the page. So it'll always be there available for you to use those buttons to insert images and things like that, so it won't disappear on you. Cameron asks, can you edit the name of the text box after inserting? No, that is something we have lost in this change, is the ability to edit the name of the text box. You can change the title of the component. So the heading of the component can be renamed, but the text box itself, the name can't be modified anymore. We might have a look at that and see if we can come up with something before we go gold. If that's something everyone's really needs. I'm happy to have a look at that, but we thought it was probably not as serious. But if it's something that you think it's important, we'll certainly have a look. Sam asks, when you name the text box in the pop-up, will the name come across to the heading field under the settings? Yes. So when you name the text box, the name will automatically be inherited by the component title. So whatever you call that text box, the component will name itself with that title. But you can go and rename the component. That won't change the name of the text box though, like I was just talking about. The text box will stay with its same name, but the title of the component can be renamed and change the component title. So I know it's a bit tricky, but it's both the component and the text box have their own independent names. But if the text box doesn't have if the component doesn't have a name, it will have the text box's name. Okay, I confused myself then. All right, moving down to calendar events. Keith asks, will we be able to create an excursion event and ask parents to decide on their child attendance in the calendar events? So yeah, this is a really common requirement to do attendance or to do permission slips. We're not quite there yet. Obviously, you know, as we keep extending and enhancing the calendar, that's probably the eventual end game. But at this stage, no, you can't really do sort of a permission slip feature via this invite. It's not what it was designed for. So I don't think that's possible. I'd still probably recommend looking at dedicated systems for doing permission slips. You know, your consent to goes, your EdSmarts, those types of products that are designed specifically around that workflow are probably going to provide a better solution, and those can be integrated back into our calendar. So that's probably still my recommendation at this stage. Luke asks, if the user is invited to an event and the event changes time, location, is there a notification to the invited user? Good question. So yes, if you, this was a big discussion just the other day we had, if you invite people to an event and you then move the event, the people in that event will be notified that that event has been updated. So by being invited to an event, every time an event is modified, you are updated, you are sent a notification about that modification. What we decided to do though is we don't uninvite people when you move an event. So we were talking about whether we should uninvite or make people confirm their attendance if we move it. We ended up deciding to leave it so that all that happens when you update an event, you change the time, everyone just gets notified and they can decide whether they want to keep their attendance or not. They can come and change that attendance if they choose. Okay, Ryan asks, is there something similar with Instagram, like the Twitter feed? At the moment, no. I haven't had a look at Instagram and to see what APIs they have available, but I could certainly put that on the list to have a look at. I know that Instagram's pretty popular these days, and certainly a lot of things come through there. So I'll certainly have a look and see if we can do Instagram these days. Mary Lou says she's worried about the hashtags, not being able to handle hashtags. Now, I'll just talk about hashtags. It's an interesting issue. And I've always warned about the dangers of hashtags because hashtags can be co-opted. Anyone can post into a hashtag. So if you had a feed to a particular hashtag, anyone in the world can come and put something with that hashtag into your page. Just think about that for a moment. All they need to do is hashtag their post with what you're filtering to, and that will appear on your page. So I really do worry about the use of hashtags. So I'm okay that it's gone. In replacement, Twitter does have some features called collections and lists. And collections and lists, although not as dynamic as hashtags, they allow you to manage information that you can you can tag posts into a list or a collection, allowing you to curate what goes onto the page. So it's a better thing than just allowing anyone to go into your page and post something. All right, moving on. So got lots of questions about the restore feature. So Trevor asks, can we see who deleted it? Unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky for us to bring that information through. We're not capturing it at the moment. Bit of an oversight that we're probably not capturing it. It is available in logs. So if you do want to know who deleted something, you can always look in the CMS logs. But in the actual record, we can't see who deleted it. So they're not joined at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, I would recommend if you want to see who's deleted something, going into the logs. It's probably the best way at the moment. All right, Russell asks, can you alter the retention period for restores? At the moment, it's hard-coded to 1 week. There's a couple of reasons for that. The further away things get, the more dangerous it becomes to restore something. Because of the change in locations and hierarchies and things like that can move around, things that have been deleted for a long time are often more problematic to restore. So I'm nervous about allowing restore periods for longer periods of time. So at this stage, I'm comfortable with 7 days. If you do need something restored that's beyond 7 days, just contact support and we can work through it. Support has better tools that can look at what's going to happen, whether it's going to break anything, they can do that analysis and really give you an understanding of if it's okay or not. So they have dry run tools and a bunch of other things that make it a bit more sophisticated than what is just here. So if you do have something that you need to restore that was deleted a few weeks ago, or something like that, do just put a support request in still, like you've always done, and we'll get in touch with you. All right, Michelle asks, can we permanently delete from the restore? If there's an admin, we know it has to be deleted. It's a good question, Michelle, and it was something I considered adding, and it is something we do actually have that functionality now available. We have what's called a hard delete. It's only applicable really to files at the moment. So we don't have restore files, you would have noticed that. Likely we will need to develop an interface to restore files and also an interface to hard delete files. Having said that, hard deleting comes with a whole lot of caveats that really need to be explained before people go and just decide they want to hard delete things. In Schoolbox, multiple things can link to the one file. And so if you hard delete a file, all of those links are also deleted. So although you might think you're only deleting it from one location, you're actually deleting it from many, many locations potentially. And we can't tell you all of those locations easily. So that's something that we always get nervous about with hard deletes. And I know that a lot of schools do want it. And certainly when we're looking at data retention laws and privacy laws, things like right to be forgotten are becoming more and more important. And with that in mind, hard delete is a necessity, a compliance necessity. So it will become something that we do offer. We will certainly already offer it via support, but we will offer perhaps an interface for in the future as well. But yeah, it is one of those things like it's difficult to delete something forever, because one, it's all the links, and two, it's gone. And when we're unable to restore it, we're unable to ever bring it back. So it is a problem. Okay, James asks, does restore assessment work if the unit was deleted as well? You won't actually be able to see any assessments that are in deleted units. So if you delete an entire course, you won't see all of the assessments that were deleted as part of that course. You'll only see the course as the deleted thing in the folder area. When you recover that course, you'll actually recover all of the assessments with it as well in one go. It's called the recursive undeleter. It actually works down through the tree, undeleting everything that it finds that was deleted at that moment in time as well. I should talk about that. That moment in time is really critical because there's a window of time by which, if you've deleted things in multiple batches, we don't necessarily want to recover them all in one go. So the system is aware of that. So if you've deleted something last week and then you delete something again next week and then you delete the whole lot, through the tree, the system will only restore the part that you deleted at that time, that final delete, not the other batches as well. So there is quite a lot of complexity hidden beneath this restore tool. I know the interface looks really simple, but there is actually a lot going on, and why we've been fairly nervous about bringing it for some time. Okay. All right. Dean asks, can you turn the access to the markbook on and off in the admin area, or is it off by default for all teachers? The markbook can be turned on and off at a global level. So you can turn off the markbook for all teachers, but you can't turn it on and off at a class level. So it doesn't have the ability to turn on and off at a class level. Once it's either on or off as a markbook feature. So yeah, there's a bunch of features that are still global settings, and they're what we call feature flags. So they turn on and off the feature. And that's one of them. So markbooks can be turned off, but that whole feature. Trevor asks, does this stop year level coordinators from viewing all markbooks? No. So with the markbook permissions, basically what it is now, as it stands, is that it looks at two things. So firstly, it looks to see if you have read access as a group member. If you do, it won't allow you access. So that's the first rule. So if you're just a group member with read access, you don't get access. So that's not year level coordinators. That's just people who are in a group as members with read access. Okay, so then at the next stage of the permission checks for the markbook looks at whether you're a staff member or if you've got write access to the page. So basically, year level coordinators fall into the staff member category. So what that means is all staff members can see all markbooks. So they all still have access to that markbook. So yes, year level coordinators still can see other teachers' markbooks. And for that matter, other teachers can see other teachers' markbooks as well. So if you're a support or an aide in a class, you can see that markbook just like the teacher can. So markbooks are never really locked down to a teacher per se. Okay. Andrew asks, will the new year level visibility settings override what is currently set up? It's a good question, Andrew. So let's talk about the override of the year level settings. So when you apply a year level to a folder, the system will first check the year level settings. If you apply multiple year levels, because you can actually apply multiple year levels to one class. So a class could be in grade 3, 4. If you apply multiple year levels to that class, it will check the config. If both of the year levels configs are the same, it'll use that. If they're different, i.e. if they're in conflict, it will fall back to the system setting. So if it goes, okay, I can't decide between the year 3 and year 4 setting, I will use the system setting. So just be aware of that. Like if you've got multiple year levels on one folder and they're different, you will be falling back to the system setting. But in general, it will override the system setting as soon as you apply that folder to that class page, or that year level to that folder. All right. Darren asks, that's a half a question. I won't ask that. Darren asks, for existing class, how do you set the year level? So let's just do that as an example on my screen. So if we go to an existing class and say, I'm looking at a middle school, I've got some year 9 classes here, and I want to apply a year 9 code to this class page. I go to year 9A English, modify. And down here under the subject code, you'll find year levels is a drop down, and I can select year 9. And this is what I was talking about before. I can actually select multiple. So in most cases, it'll be 1, but we recognize that sometimes you do have composite year level classes and you want to represent that. And so you can do that, but just be aware of the impacts that may have if the settings are different. Okay. Jess asks, will changes to the markbook automatically adjust existing markbooks? Yes. Any changes you make in the admin system or around the overall mark scheme will be instantly applied, especially things like overall mark changes. The calculation will just immediately change. So yes, changes will be immediately applied. All right, just some quick questions. Oh, there's so many more questions, but I don't have much longer, so I'm going to try and quickly burst through them all. There's a few requests. I'll skip all the requests for features. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just scanning through looking for questions rather than feature requests. All right. There's a couple of questions about cloud-hosted Schoolbox and progress on that. So I might just talk quickly about cloud-hosted products in general. So obviously I've talked a bit about, in general, Schoolbox is moving towards a more cloud-based product, and we see that very much as our future. And during the shutdown, as schools' usage spiked, and we saw 5-10 times the usage that we normally would see, obviously schools had to ramp up their servers and things like that, and that all generally just worked. But there are limits to that, and the cloud was able to absorb that scaling in such a better, more sustainable way. And it wasn't just the resources; it's also the storage requirements as well. So, we've seen schools adding hundreds of gigabytes of disk each couple of months as they grow and their usage increases, and the lockdown's really putting a lot of growth into Schoolbox, which is all understandable. So we are going head on into making sure that schools have a pathway towards migrating towards the cloud. And that's made up of a couple of different parts to that strategy. Firstly, I talked about the APIs for SIS integrations. So your WANs, your TAS APIs, your central APIs, all of those API-based SIS connections will work on the cloud, will work in the cloud. And so you can be, if you've got a SIS that supports a cloud-based API, we can migrate you into the cloud and you'll still be able to get access to all of that data. So when the WAND API gets implemented, customers who are on Synergetic will be able to make that transition to a cloud-based Schoolbox and connect their Schoolbox to their Synergetic via the WAND API. In terms of other parts of that strategy for migrating to the cloud, there's another big part of it is storage, and I'll talk about storage growth. And in the cloud, we have unlimited storage growth. It just keeps growing. We can just keep putting files in there, and it just keeps going. So we really want to unlock that capability for our customers. And so we've developed 2 new products that are available to our customers. The first is a cloud-based disaster recovery system, which will synchronize all of your school's data to the cloud, and in the event of a disaster will allow us to recover your Schoolbox instance into a cloud-based instance. So it's a bit of peace of mind. So if you want to do some risk assessment and you've decided that you don't have enough fault tolerance on your single on-premise installation, we can provide a backup solution that will also allow us to spin up a new instance in the cloud if necessary in the case of a disaster. So that's one option that we've developed recently. In addition to that, we've added a cloud-based storage solution that allows your on-premise instance to store its data in the cloud. So rather than storing all of its files on local disk, it will store it in cloud S3 storage. And when users come to request those files, they'll be delivered to them directly from the cloud. They won't have to go through your server. The benefits, obviously, of this is that you don't have to pay for storage anymore. It'll be backed up by us in fault-tolerant disk in S3. It's infinitely scalable. So this is a really sort of interesting solution to schools that are probably, still need an on-premise solution, but are struggling with the disk capacity issues. We can then give you a sort of a hybrid solution where you get a bit of both worlds, where you can have an on-premise Schoolbox connected to your SIS, but all your data is being delivered from the cloud, giving you much better scalability and much better storage capacity. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up. Thank you everyone for your time. I'm sorry to the people I haven't got around to everyone's questions. Thank you everyone for participating. It's been great. We'll obviously be posting release notes onto our help forum very soon. If not, they may already be up. We will be pushing out the release very soon to your dev servers, so look out for that. And we'll be notifying everyone when the gold release is available, so you can schedule in the time to have your upgrade completed. So thank you everyone very much, and I'll speak to you all soon.